You're listening to the 95 Podcast from the team at 95 Network, where we host conversations specifically designed to support leaders in small and mid-sized churches.
Everybody, welcome back to the 95 Podcast. This is Dale Sellers, Executive Director at 95 Network, hanging out with Dan Nichols today. Dan's been on here so much he could be co-host.
Not exactly, but close. Close.
Dan is my best northern friend because we connected when I first started leading 95 Network. I mean, very early on, you reached out and we connected. I'm not quite sure how we first got in contact with each other. But we've been hanging out together and doing podcasts and events together for years. And love you, love your heart, love your passion for soul winning. And you're just kind of a cool guy. Not super, not over the top cool, but pretty cool guy. You know what I'm saying? So
I don't even know what that means anymore.
Yeah,
I'm kind of over the hill that way.
Yeah, take a moment and tell everybody a little bit about yourself in case they haven't heard the other podcast, and then we'll kind of move toward our topic today.
Yeah. I've been following Jesus for over 30 years now. My best friend Joy and I have been married for 11 years. We have two boys, Landon and Declan, 9 and 4. Our oldest, Landon, has survived 3 open heart surgeries before kindergarten. Started out as a church planter in inner city Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. Then launched a network called Northeast Collaborative. It's a small regional church network. And then now I lead a 223-year-old church in central New York, just half an hour south of Syracuse, that was planted when Thomas Jefferson was president. So
wow.
That's a little bit nice.
Is he still there?
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
He's walking the halls. So you're a young guy leading an old church. You got to tell me, how's that going?
Oh man, God's doing amazing things here.
Really?
Really incredible things. Yeah, I owe so much to like over two centuries of history. My predecessor did incredible things that I never could do, and I was able to come into a debt-free reality after the church had gone through some really tough stuff 15 years ago. Mike Dunn, my predecessor, spent 12 years doing incredible work to revitalize and restabilize the church and get it really healthy. And then I got to come into not just debt-free, but just a lot of people who are hungry for the right things, hungry
That's
for
awesome.
things that matter for eternity. So yeah, we're kicking Satan in the face up here.
That's good to hear. Right now you hear more of the other side of succession and people waiting too late and the church is not being healthy. Do you know any of the what did he do to kind of turn it around? Because you said it was going through some difficult times. Can you dive into that without going into things you're not supposed to?
Yeah. No, it's a lot of this is very public. So, many years ago, the church started a building campaign, and the pastor at that time left right at the outset of the building campaign. So the church said, "No, we're going to build it ourselves," and they did, and they went to I think it was 2.7 million in debt, and moved in, had some real divisions, fights, splits, and Mike Dunn came in 15 years ago and just started healing, stabilizing, doing a lot of amazing things. Mike Dunn is actually one of the humblest guys I've ever met in my life. And so I think the whole succession thing, it's got to start with a humble heart. And he had that. Like when the pandemic hit, he did not grasp the driver's seat of the church and go, I got to hang on to this. He said, no, I'm not the guy. And he just went to the church and said, I've served you well for 12 years. I'm not the guy post-pandemic. And God used some incredible things to bring us to Central New York. I never thought that I would take a 223-year-old church, and I definitely didn't think I would move to New York. New York was like state number 50 of the states that I thought that I would move to.
Yeah, but you've always taken on tough challenges, and that sounds like that one. It was a tough challenge, but it's typical, really. Whether it's a lot of churches build buildings thinking that whole lie that if we build them if we build it they will come. And so, in fact, the church that I grew up in, from time to time, we'll drive past it, and they have this huge, sign out front, an LED sign, a normal sign. But I remember as a kid growing up there, the fights that took place over them spending $30,000 to put that sign up, and it was like, if we put this sign up, people are just going to come left and right, and nobody came because of the sign, but there was a lot of fighting about it, and so sometimes the church can get hyper focused on things where someone just decided, hey, if we do this, it'll work. And it doesn't work. And then you discover the agendas, which I'm sure was what Mike found.
Yeah, there were a lot of agendas like that led to a lot of the divisions. And so Mike was a peacemaker, a stabilizer, just an incredibly faithful guy who um, just every day did the next right thing for 12 years was, and the cool thing is they went debt free in the pandemic. There was a gentleman who passed away, and this is pretty public as well. He left $500,000 and they were able to pay off the final debt of that the building mortgage um, in the pandemic right before I was able to come in. And so what a gift that
Yeah.
not only Mike and the team that was there gave to me, but also the church, because I'm telling you, this church is filled with some of the most incredible people you've ever met in your life. And my wife Joy just had a scary thing happen health-wise this summer. Dude, our fridge, like we couldn't even close our fridge. There was so much food in it, and people would just drop by praying for us, giving us, financial resources, food, meals. I mean, it was unbelievable. Just incredible people here.
That's amazing, and it's good to see that the older church understands the value of embracing a younger guy. Do you have anyone that's not walking with you as a mentor, or what I want to lean into is, are you using someone else's credibility to kind of help bridge the gap as they get to know you, or are you just like a fish out of water that they caught?
Well, we have I mean, so we have an amazing staff team. We have 14 of
Okay.
us on the staff team, which is great. One of them is my good friend Justin Bluer, who
Yes.
I don't
I
know if
know.
he's been on the podcast or not, but he pastors about 45 minutes south. And this is another incredible thing. Their church let us buy out his Mondays. So every Monday, he's been leading Berean for 15 years,
Hmm.
and he's been coming in and doing coaching just like I'm covering the 30,000 and a lot of boots on the ground. He excels at that 15,000 level between
Hmm.
30 and zero. And
You're
he
not
has
talking about a
been,
number of people. You're talking about
no,
just
sorry.
yeah. I want to
Leadership
make sure we
level. Sorry.
clear
So like
that up, folks.
the
He
the
doesn't have
30,000 foot
30,000 people in the
view
church. Yeah, there we go.
that sorry, that's totally my bad. Yeah, 30,000 foot leadership level,
Yeah,
like that's where my wheelhouse is. And then ground zero, boots on the ground, like those two are more my wheelhouse. The 15,000, middle level, I struggle with that in like the sequencing and the systems and the processes. So he's come in and just helped on so many levels. That's been really helpful. And then, yes, I have many mentors from a distance
yeah.
who have been incredible help to me. Yeah.
Well, see that the key to what you just said is understanding as a leader, you're not wired to know it all, do it all, or you're not
Mm-mm.
gifted to have it all. And
Mm-mm.
what a lot of pastors, I think my experience is a lot of them are more of the 15,000 foot level versus the 30,000 foot level, but both they need each other. And so the fact that you have Justin, it's a really great idea. And I think just throwing that on the podcast, you say you're paying him to come from another church one day a week.
Yeah, so he is the teaching pastor at one of our sister churches, for lack of a better term. I mean,
Sure.
we do so much together. We do a lot of collaborative things. I mean, starting a nonprofit called Northeast Collaborative. That's just
Mm-hmm.
kind of how we roll.
Mm-hmm.
But Berean already had that DNA. So when they jumped into NEC, it was just, God had already had that in their DNA. And so we went to them. I said, Justin, like, would Berean be willing to give you up one day a week so that Grace can thrive? And their elder team and their leadership said, yeah, we're willing to do that. And that is just, I can't even tell you again what an amazing gift that is from Berean and their kingdom, capital K kingdom mindedness rather than selfishly hoarding resources, kind of like the church at Antioch, where they sent Paul and
Mm-hmm.
Barnabas, right? They could have hoarded them, but they
Yeah.
didn't. They sent them.
Well, just Dale being a practical thinker about everything thinks, wow, what a concept to help a church that may be struggling to cover its whole budget right now. If there's an opportunity for them to like, share their staff with other churches, that
Yes.
might be a financial way to lift, at least lift the load. I just thinking out loud,
Staff
that's
sharing needs to become more of a norm, especially in the post-pandemic era, whatever
yeah,
we're calling this. Like,
yeah.
yes, staff sharing, if anyone is curious about what that's looked like and how we do it, we'd love to, you know, talk to you more about that.
I think that would be another podcast we should do very soon.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll get
Yeah,
you and
Justin.
Justin on there. But again, we're trying to, on this side of the pandemic, as you said, well, I don't know if it's post-pandemic or what it is, but on this side, we have a lot of people like doing virtual things. Like there's a lot of virtual executive pastors, and I think that's wonderful.
Mhm.
But actually having a human being there on site, hands-on, talking to people, from time to
Yeah.
time, that is even better, I think, in the long run.
Well, ministry is relationships.
Yeah.
And yes, there is the trellis. If you've never read The Trellis and the Vine, it's a great book. I mean, yes, you have to have the trellis. You have to have accounting and systems and legal and all these things. I think after the pandemic, though, we're waking up to the fact that ministry really is relationships, discipleship. It's about the vine. And yeah, I digital stuff is great if
Sure.
it's a tool to something. If it's the end goal, we got a problem. But if it's a tool to real relationships, real embodied presence that is meaningful and changes lives for eternity, then
Mhm.
I think that's important.
There's this guy in the Bible named Jesus that talked about this whole vine thing, and it really that's what you're talking about. It kind of applies to that. But let's shift gears here a little bit. We're talking today because you've written a book.
Yes. Yes. I have well, my 9-year-old now, back when he was 8, Landon looked at his mom Joy and he said, "Mom, do you know what I think the hardest thing in the world is?" And my wife was like, "What?" And he goes, "Following Jesus." He's like, "I think following Jesus is the hardest thing in the world." And Joy was like, "Why?" He said, "Because there's so many people who don't follow Jesus." And it's kind of like, out of the mouths of babes and
Sure.
infants, right? Like he has been wrestling so deeply with this decision that he knows he's got to own for himself, whether he is going to really give his life to Jesus or hold on to it for himself. And if he's wrestling with it at that deep of a level at 8 and 9 years old, and we've been having amazing conversations before that, but like
Yeah.
especially after he voiced that, and I just really think we need more tools to help Gen Alpha have a resilient faith. And I have a quote here by Nate Heitzig. It's really powerful. A positive Christian experience at home is the single most important factor in sustained faith.
I agree with that.
I do too. And I think we're seeing that around the nation in a lot of ways. So, yeah, I wrote a paraphrase that's geared for third to seventh grade reading levels. A lot of what's out there for kids is typically like storybook pictures and like overview. And
Hmm.
then you have the new living translation that's written for an eighth grade reading level. But between storybook and overview and eighth grade reading level, there's kind of this gap between that third to seventh grade where they are able to read and they're excited about reading some,
Hmm.
but they're not ready to access the adult vocabulary. And so, yeah, the first release will be Philippians, and that's coming out before Christmas. And then Colossians will come out before Easter. And, you never know, maybe the whole New Testament. I'm not
I'm
sure about
I'm
Revelation yet, but
I'm just so glad you clarified because I thought, oh, you wrote a whole paraphrase of the whole Bible because of
no.
that. Wow, but I mean, it took Eugene Peterson years, and you did it in like a month or two. That's
No,
really good, man.
no. I taught through Philippians this year
Uh-huh.
at our church. Well, our team did, and I went and did a youth camp for younger like Gen Alpha age,
Hmm.
and yeah, God just used a lot of factors to put this on my heart. And then I've been partnering with Story Builders Publishing, and they've
Hmm.
been amazing to work with. And yeah, it'll be coming out before Christmas. Really excited about it.
We'll definitely have all the links and everything to it here in the show notes. Talk to me about the different gens. You say Gen Alpha. How many? I don't even know how many we have anymore. You know,
So
do all the
all I
generations
know,
that are alive right now?
yeah,
'Cause I will
I
say
have a
this:
lot of
mine, the
friends,
baby boomers, mine, we're dying. So I'm
right?
the youngest baby boomer is 60 now.
A lot of friends of mine would be much better experts, like as
Yes.
far as the youth men side of things.
Hmm.
All I know is Gen Z, or like 2000.
Okay.
So now Gen Z is like 24 and they're
Hmm.
starting to,
Have
really
families.
own the adulting thing, which is
Hmm.
weird to me because for so many years it's been like, let's reach Gen Z, reach Gen Z. And it's like,
Yeah.
holy cow, they're not kids anymore, right?
Yeah.
Like, I was an adjunct prof for 3 semesters at Clark Summit University, and I remember walking in to teach, and it was so interesting to me. Like, I remember what I was like when I was in college, and going, "Oh my gosh, like I'm the old fuddy-duddy now as a millennial," which is like so weird. So Gen Alpha, I guess, is after that at some point.
So
I'm
you
I'm
have
no
the baby boomers, then millennials, then Gen X, I think is correct. Is that right? I just tried to,
uh,
I don't know the
I
labels.
think it just goes millennials, Gen Z.
Okay, cool. And so
I
the
could be
next one up
wrong.
is Alpha.
I'm
Well,
not
well,
sure.
there's a Gen X in there somewhere. I think we just left those poor people behind.
Dale, we need to do our research, man. We're not experts at this.
Well, no,
All I know
when
is
you start talking about Gen Alpha, I'm thinking like the way maybe other people are thinking too. Okay, wow, are we already into another generation? And we are, because
yes.
the hard part about ministry is this: nothing stops.
No,
It
it
just keeps
doesn't.
going. It
It
just
doesn't
keeps
stay
going.
static.
And one of the things, that I struggle with just as a human being, I do, you and I were talking off mic, we just finished building a house and I've still got a few things to finish up. But one of the things we learned a few years ago, we were doing a podcast post Easter and we were talking about some ideas to help pastors kind of reset after Easter and that kind of thing. And one of our guys, Bobby, made this statement. He said, well, the biggest problem that I have is, he says, we don't ever get to complete anything. And he started talking that through a little bit. And I actually have added that to our soul care conference in our third session. I talk about the need for completion. When you're in
Mhm.
ministry and you never get to complete anything, because ministry, there's no completion until people go to heaven. You take and pour your life into people and pour your life into people. And then, you preach something one day where you said something they didn't like, and they're gone. And that keeps us disrupted as leaders. It keeps us disrupted as pastors, and
Yeah.
being able to complete things is very important. And in this era, especially right now, you can't complete anything because the rules change every 2 weeks. Have you seen that? Like with the finish line just keeps moving, man.
Yeah. Yeah, it is not an easy time to be in ministry leadership. And I've heard many pastors who are in their 60s, 70s, 80s look at what we're facing now currently and go, yeah, this is the hardest season we've ever seen for pastoral ministry, especially.
So, that, I guess part of that's what prompted you to write the what you're writing is just to help make things simple. Kind of walk us through some of what you've written and the heart behind it.
Yeah, so a lot of it started with my son Landon and my son Declan, where just as a dad, like I desperately want them to give their lives to Jesus, but yet as a pastor, like I grew up as a pastor's kid, and
Yeah.
one of the things that my parents gave to me was this amazing gift of Daniel, you've got to own your faith for yourself. You
Yep.
cannot just borrow it from us. So I want to pass that on to my boys. And so that's the real heart behind it. But then I just noticing that there's this huge gap in people view the Bible so differently now. Back in the day, people would
Hmm.
say, "Oh, the Bible's just irrelevant. Like, who cares? No big deal." Now, especially Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they are growing up in an American culture that says the Bible is evil.
Mm,
And
mm,
those are
mm.
two very different things. And I love actually one of the guys who endorsed the book is Dan Kimball. He wrote a book, How Not to Read the Bible. And he basically spends that whole book like debunking a lot of the myths that Gen Z and Gen Alpha are seeing on social media and seeing online because they're being told constantly the Bible is evil, the Bible is evil, the Bible is evil. And I think a lot of what makes the Bible scary is people haven't actually like accessed it themselves, whether they grew up in the church. Some people grew up in church and they've never accessed it for themselves. Then
Hmm.
other people, especially in the Northeast, they never even would think of being a Christian or going to church. Like that's
Hmm.
just silly. That's crazy. So this is something where I want to empower parents, guardians, and grandparents, especially, to come alongside their younger kids and help them see with discussion questions and coloring pages and all this interactive stuff to do discipleship in the home because it's the single greatest factor of how resilient faith is passed on.
We keep hearing that over and over and over again. I was attending a service this past week in our hometown, and the pastor talked about the impact of just mom and dad um,
Yes.
teach it versus hiring someone to do it. I'm not anti-youth pastor. I'm not anti-children's pastor. I think it's great to minister to kids on their level. But too many people think, well, I take my kids to children's church once a week. That's not going to get it done.
It's not
That's not
it.
going to cut it.
That's not it. No. And it's the same with evangelism, right? So for a long, long time, it's, hey, let's bring our friends to the paid professional to share the
Yes.
gospel for us.
Yes.
Now we're all going, oh, shoot, we've got to be salt and light in our spheres of influence. But how do I do that? How do I ask good questions? How do I start spiritual conversations? How do I share my story of how God changed me? So in an evangelism sense, we're seeing that, but definitely in the home sense, like, yes, our church programs are wonderful, but they are not the destination. They are an assistance
Yes.
to help empower parents because the family is where discipleship starts.
Amen. I used to work at a Christian radio station and I did promotion of concerts. Back in the day, Christian concerts were huge in 80s, 90s, even in the
Mm,
2000s. And my wife and I had a group on the road for years when we first got married. And then I went to the other side where I was promoting. And one of the things that would happen often with the Christian radio station, because a church could come, like, let's just say you're bringing in, I don't know, Mercy Me. You're bringing Mercy Me to Grace Fellowship. And so you'd go and advertise it on the station. We'd let you advertise for free. And so many churches would book some group, and then things got very expensive. So they're booking these groups, and they think just because they booked a group and they put it on the radio that they're going to have a huge crowd. And what I tried to teach them is that putting on the radio is a reinforcer to what you're
mm,
already, the promotion you're already doing. If you're not doing promotion, if you're not doing things to motivate your people to get out there, then putting on the radio is not going to work. I feel like that's been the mindset in a way to decide. Again, we say discipleship like people do it. I mean, this is a word we use in the church that we are just now beginning to recognize. We're nowhere near it. But
no,
I think that's what happens often is that we think, well, I brought them to children's church, or they're in the
mm,
youth ministry, and that's not where it's at.
no, no. I think we've spent so many decades doing large well.
Yeah.
And one time I said this in a pastor's group and it got like misunderstood. Someone thought I meant that I want the church to get smaller. And I
Hmm.
said, no, no, no. We need to do small well.
Yeah.
I'm not saying we need to get smaller. I'm saying we need to do small well, one-on-one relationships, groups, right? Like more relationship building with each other rather than focusing all of our time, money, and effort on doing big well.
Yeah.
Because doing big well, I think the pandemic showed us it has not left us with a huge percentage of resilient disciples.
Nope. Not at
The
all.
pandemic highlighted and exacerbated our discipleship issue where discipleship, I think correctly defined, is simply helping someone find and follow Jesus.
Yeah.
And the most effective way to do that is doing small well.
Yeah.
And large is not bad. It's only bad if it becomes ultimate. And that's kind of what happened, I think, over the last
Oh,
half
we haven't
century
haven't
American
talked
church.
about it as much lately, but the pandemic was an accelerator. Whatever you were
Yes.
doing was accelerated, and whatever you were doing got bigger, broader, and brighter very quickly. And because in fact, I was with you guys in
Yes.
February before the pandemic, and,
Yes.
and we did 3 conferences that week. And it was like you tell churches, guys, this stuff here needs to be dealt with, and it's kind of like people are like, we'll get to that one day.
We'll
Well,
get to that.
the pandemic forced us to deal with it, and then you had this situation with so many people throwing their hands up in the air, going, "But now what do I do?"
Yep.
Because they didn't know what to do. Hey, let's do this. Let's take a short break, and we'll come back. I want to talk some more about the book. Okay, let's do that.
Awesome.
Back here with Dan talking through Church 101, but specifically the reason behind writing. You're breaking down different books of the Bible and just translating them, if that's the right word, or what word would you use?
No, yeah, so not translating. It's a paraphrase.
Paraphrasing. That's the word I wanted. Yeah,
Very similar to Eugene Peterson's
yeah.
message. The
The
difference
message.
is the message was written for adults. This is written for third to seventh grade reading levels
Yeah.
for kids.
Well, and the purpose behind it was the fact that we are trying our best at all fronts to become better at disciple making and disciples. And honestly, we haven't talked about this part, Dan, but statistics continue to bear out. They did it when I was a kid, and they still do. That most people who become Christians do it before their 20th birthday.
Right.
So there's another driver behind the reason that you need to do this.
Yeah.
Have you shared some of this with your kids or your church members yet? Have you
Oh,
give us some of the feedback?
oh my gosh. Dale, one young lady in our church, she became a believer a year ago, little over a year ago now. And she shared this with her daughter Addie. I had her daughter Addie, who's 8 years old, uh, give a little endorsement. And she said, Dan, not only was this so helpful for Addie, she goes, it was helpful for me. Like as a new believer, sometimes the Bible is so intimidating just to have like the simplicity of like an overview. And yes, so yes, in our church family, it's been really cool to see the ripple effects. Again, it's going to come out in Christmas, and every Grace Christian Fellowship, Grace Kids family is going to get one free copy just at our local church, but it'll be available on Amazon for anyone else that would like it. But yeah, it's something where it's obviously we want to move people to the real translations. We want to move people to, my favorite are the ESV, NIV, and NLT. I think all three of those are really solid for different reasons.
Hmm.
Um, but at the same time, the intimidation factor of the Bible, and especially for young kids who most of them don't enjoy reading, to have a fun interactive thing where there's coloring pages, there's discussion questions, there's a way of like, again, two of the endorsements on it are an 8-year-old and a 7-year-old who, I mean, they just really are so grateful that it's something that they can digest in their own way, but it's not overview and storybook with like just pictures and kind of like, summary paragraphs. It's actually verse by verse. And I would tell anyone who's kind of leery of paraphrases, if you've ever listened to a sermon or you've ever accessed a commentary, it's
That's the
okay.
paraphrase.
Because every sermon and every commentary are essentially
Yes,
doing what I'm doing just for younger generations.
but
So,
you chose to write it down, so you made yourself a lightning rod.
well, Dale, in all the years that we've been friends,
You've
does that
always
surprise
been a
you?
lightning
Really?
rod. Yeah,
Does that surprise
you
you?
don't mind stirring it up. So let me ask you this question then, Dan. We kind of alluded to it earlier. Why the Bible? Why is this even important?
Why is the Bible important? I'll
In
tell you why
today's
the Bible is
society,
important.
in today's society.
Dale, a couple years ago, a guy sat across from me at a dinner table and he was upset about something. And he goes, listen, he goes, I could go home and write the Bible tonight on Wikipedia. And I looked at him in the eye and I said, dude, this thing was written over 1,500 years by 40 different authors in three languages on three continents, and it has one message and 300 prophecies fulfilled. I said, you can't do that on Wikipedia tonight, bro. So, yes, the Bible is, um, it is single-handedly the most life-changing resource that we have on this planet. And it is beautiful. There are so many people who believe the lie that it's evil. And from the deepest part of my soul, I just want people to understand not only how beautiful the Bible is, but the whole point of the Bible is Jesus Christ. And he really is everything he claimed to be. And he can and will change your life like he's changed mine.
Wow, that kind of got to you, didn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
What's going on there? Why did that touch you like it did?
I think I resonate with what my son Landon's wrestling with at 8 and 9 years old of just like, there's so many people who just don't understand. They don't know. They can't see, right? Like the enemy has blinded them to the beauty and the incredible reality of who God really is. And Colossians 1 says, if you want to know who God is, you have to look at Jesus because
Mhm.
he wasn't just another religious teacher. He wasn't just another Jewish rabbi. He was God. And in my paraphrase for Colossians that's coming out uh Easter next year,
Yeah.
I say he's the goat. He's the
Yeah.
actual goat, the greatest of all time. Yeah, it's something that's very, very real to me, and it's not just a shtick.
So in your area, the phrase is used, the Bible's evil, which I've never heard that, okay, because I'm here in South Carolina, and that's not a mentality that we hear that much. But what I do observe here and have observed in my whole life is that we have access to it and we have 47 copies of it and we have a big version of it on our coffee table, but we don't read it.
Mm.
Why
Yeah,
do
I
you why
think,
do you think that is?
well, I mean, first of all, I just come by it honestly for me. I actually hate reading, which is weird. Like
I
I
do
have a
too,
demon.
actually. I
I
mean,
do.
it's how I
I
grew
hate
up.
it. I get so bored. And it's so funny, like, you've written a great book, Installed, and I did a DMin degree, which included, reading
Hmm.
like crazy and writing like crazy. So it's like I feel like reading is something that in our culture, like, Jimmy Kimmel will go out on the street and say, name a book. And he'll put
Yes.
the microphone in front of people and they can't
I
even
can't
name
name
a
one
book.
book.
So I think culturally, we just have a reading problem, regardless of the Bible.
Yeah.
But then, second, I think the Bible demands a response. Like, it is hard to engage something that's so ancient, that takes a lot of work to understand. And we know if we lean into it, it demands a response. Like, you
That's
can't just
good.
engage it and then go, well, it's just another book, like you're reading for fun. Like, you have to make a decision. What are you going to do with Jesus?
Yeah.
Is he who he claimed to be? And if he is, then he needs to be Lord of your life. And that means you're not the boss anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And and I don't, it is so obvious, is the way I'll say this, that the Bible is alive.
Oh my
It's
goodness.
so obvious that it is the Word. It is Jesus, but it just, I'll give you a little, like a simple thing to do. Like, if you don't know how to read through the Bible, read a proverb a day. There's 31
Mm,
proverbs, and you can read a proverb, a chapter of Proverbs, and that basically gets you through a month. Well, I did that for
mm,
years, just years and years and years, just reading, and it was an amazing thing to me how it talks about practical things that you deal with, and it would be nailing things on the particular day that are things that that I was being confronted with, and it was just like this is so alive,
yes.
you know.
It is not only is it practical, but like we don't make the Bible relevant. All we do is demonstrate how relevant it has always been since God inspired it and put what needed to be written down into these 40 plus different authors who were broken men just like we all are,
Hmm.
but God chose to use, and this is the beauty of the good news, right? He uses broken men and women like you and me to accomplish the purposes he has that will last forever, right? I was just listening to First Peter this morning, right? And this apostle who followed Jesus and was quite a coward in a lot of ways, right?
Yep.
He was kind of like a loudmouth coward, but then God turned him into a world changer, and he said, "The grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of God stands forever." And I love how the Bible Project brings this into view with like creation, right? Like everything was created from what? The Word of God. When God
Hmm.
speaks, it's true and it lasts forever. That's amazing.
Well, just the fact that whether you choose to believe it or accept it or not, it outlived you. It was here long before you got here. It'll be here long after
I
you.
love the story of Voltaire. This amazing story of Voltaire who like was determined to eradicate the Bible. He did everything he could to say the Bible's going to be done, da da da. He dies, and his home became a printing press for the Bible. That's amazing.
Well, I
So,
think I'm thankful for you. I'm thankful for the effort you're putting forth because it's this simple. We need a move of God in this country like
oh yeah.
we haven't seen. You can call it a revival, awakening, whatever you want to call it. It's beyond the political stuff. It's the formulas and processes that we've used in churches to be able to have meetings but not be impacted.
Mm,
We can get together and have a church service, and if Jesus, quote unquote, doesn't show up, it doesn't seem to be noticed. I believe
yeah.
those days are being left behind us. I really do because, and I don't want to get into too much of this, but you and I were talking before we started. If your theology or the way you've been brought up has basically just prepared you for a kind of an easy life or a non-threatened
Mm,
life, then you may be in trouble if things get difficult. What
hmm.
do you think about that?
Yeah, well, I think they are going to get more difficult because, the the night, the brighter the light shines. So
Hmm.
yes, the obstacles are real, but we want to focus on the opportunities
Yes.
of shining the light. I just preached on salt and light, so I won't repreach the whole sermon, but like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, when Jesus said that, he was coming off the Beatitudes and he's saying, this isn't a checklist of like religious, like, yeah, go,
Mm-hmm.
tell people about me. He's like, this is who you are.
Yeah.
Like your identity in the kingdom reality that I'm inaugurating here. This is who you are. You are salt. You are light. You are an ambassador. The question, if you follow Jesus, you're either an effective, faithful ambassador or a poor ambassador. There's no
No in
am I.
between. Yeah.
That's just who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we're at, see, I personally believe that this should be the greatest hour of the church in
Yes.
our lifetime there's ever been,
Well, and it
because of the
is.
world. Yeah. Go ahead.
It is. Revival is actually happening in pockets. I know it may
Mhm.
not be like this, third great awakening yet,
Yeah.
but man, on college campuses, I mean,
Hmm.
we're seeing it at Ohio State, and I forget another one recently. Like students, especially Gen Z and Gen Alpha, like they are starting to really like see the gravity of what it means to follow Jesus rather than be a cultural Christian, right? Like a
Hmm.
nominal, like, well. I'm not Buddhist, so I guess
Yeah.
I'll say I'm Christian, but following Jesus, like I don't really do that. Like I think Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they are recognizing, no, if we're gonna do this, it's all or nothing.
Yeah.
And frankly, that's exactly what Jesus said it should have been all along.
And we need leaders who have that same mentality. We need
Yes.
leaders who model that for the next gen, who show that to them. Part of, and I've always believed that we should be as relevant culturally as we possibly can. But I think part of what happened to us over the last few decades was we got so culturally relevant that we lost our fire and our passion.
Yes. Because good things that become ultimate things turn into bad things.
Can I say that again?
Good things
Hmm.
that become ultimate things turn into bad things. So being relevant, being a good missionary to a culture is a good thing.
Hmm.
But when it became the ultimate thing, like
Hmm.
we've got to be so cool and we've got to be so relevant, it became a bad thing because it was an ultimate thing and it almost in a lot of ways replaces Jesus.
Hmm.
And so, yes, we want to be good missionaries to a culture that needs Jesus, but you can't get the cart and horse mixed up. The whole point is Jesus. And following Jesus in a culture means a lot of times that you're not going to be relevant because light and salt stings
Hmm.
at first. Like when it hits, the sore or the wound, it stings. When light, like if you've been in darkness for a
Hmm.
long, long time and you have a bright light shine, it is disorienting. But light brings warmth and salt brings healing and
Hmm.
preservation. So yes, over time, many will see and come to know Jesus because we're salt and light. But at the outset, there's resistance and there's hardship. And I think we've kind of settled over the last, especially half century of American Christianity, of let's just avoid all the tough stuff
Hmm.
because that's what discipleship is. Discipleship is messy. It is hard. It is not sexy at all. Like if
Yep.
you're really doing discipleship, it's not going to sell. It's not a great brand. It's hard stuff. Killing sin before it kills you, that is hard stuff, but it's exactly what we need. And it needs to happen, I believe, in more of the small environments with our homes, one-on-one relationships. And we need to leave the big stuff for more of like mobilizing and launching people and equipping them,
Yeah.
training them to be effective in those smaller environments.
That's so good. So you're sitting down with a pastor today as we wrap up the podcast. You're sitting with a pastor today, and the stuff we've been talking about is stirring their soul.
Mm.
Stirring their soul. They want to make a difference. They want to lead. They want to tap into that energy that's out there with this next gen. What would you tell them?
Same four words my dad's told me my whole life. Stay close to Jesus. Stay close to Jesus. And then really lean into who God made you to be. Like we can't be everything, right? Like none of us is wired to be everything. Like I think so many pastors today have very low EQs, very low emotional health, very low emotional intelligence, and we need healing in a
Yeah, that's
lot
not a
of.
slam, by the way. That's just a fact. That's
No,
not saying you're not
I
smart.
have I
You're
have
talking about
I have
emotional.
struggled with.
Yeah.
Yes. Someone just recently asked me, they said, "Hey, I'm thinking being a pastor. What do you think about that?" And I said, "You have to lean into your emotional health.
Yeah.
You have to." I have had to go through so much counseling and mentoring and surrounding myself with people. So yeah, thank you, Dale. I did not intend that to be a slam at all.
I
I
didn't.
have.
I wanted to make sure it didn't. It wasn't one, but I wanted to make sure people heard you say emotional intelligence, not the IQ thing,
Oh,
because you said EQ and then
right.
IQ. Because well, this is what we're seeing too, and the problem is this is it's very difficult to get people to recognize it's okay to get help.
Yes.
Been struggling with that one.
Yes.
It's like we got
Yeah,
help
there's a
for you.
huge difference, right? So yes, of course we have unbelievably brilliant ministry leaders and pastors and theologians. Like yes, yes, yes. IQ, I don't think is our issue.
No, it's never been. It
EQ is
is.
a huge issue. And I have seen it in my own life where in my marriage, in my own discipleship, my walk with Jesus, and then in my, leadership and who I am as a leader, if I'm not surrounding myself with people that can help me in my brokenness, that can heal parts that of me that need healing, um, everyone around me suffers.
Hmm.
But the more I've leaned into that, oh my gosh. And even with counseling, like we've got to, as pastors, we do so much counseling. We have got to get over ourselves in thinking that we don't need it just as much as everyone
That's
else.
right, man.
And it is not a bad word. It is a healing, amazing. And God has empowered and equipped amazing, biblically faithful men and women who are counseling on very like high end, like clinical levels
Hmm. Hmm.
and biblical levels
Hmm.
and even on mentoring, right? Like more of
Hmm.
a friendship based, like walking the road together. All of those things are so important. So yeah, I would, if any pastor is listening to this is stirring their soul, I would say stay close to Jesus and get the help you need to be emotionally intelligent and emotionally healthy because that's going to make or break you for the long haul.
That's such great advice, man. Thank you so much for who you are and your friendship with me and 95 Network over the years. I appreciate you. And like I said, we'll put links to your resource there in the show notes. But
Mm.
thank you again for taking your time to be part of this, man. I always love talking to you.
Thanks, Dale.
Thanks for listening to the 95 Podcast. We look forward to sharing another episode with you next week. In the meantime, visit our website at 95network.org. The website is loaded with great resources created for small and mid-sized church leaders. Until next time, have a great week.